So Andrea, we have heard that there's a huge need for changing and that we now just have a little step with the proposals. So tell us from the point of view of the organic farmers, what is a next step, a little more step we need now, or we can reach now in the discussions we will have in the next months in the, with the European Parliament and the national member states and so on.
Thank you. And well, first of all, I think that we have a problem of methodology, no? Because it is true, we have a new thing. Parliament is there. It wasn't there, no? So now to decide the common agriculture policy, we have also the Parliament. And this means that the discussion, it's wider, it's broader, there are more actors involved. But if we have to say that really in Europe there is a social debate on CAP, well, this is really missing. And this is why we can't get this final step that we would like to achieve. Because still the CAP that is so important for the European society is not a problem for farmers. It's not a problem of farmers. It's something that it really involves all the society. And this is what we are missing. We are not arriving to mobilize a real social debate on that, because we will never achieve what we want. What is the strength of our sector? That we have a real link and with the consumers, and they recognize the role of the farmer. That's the very important thing, because we need to be recognized for our role. We are important in this society. We are not something marginal. Europe without farmer has no future. So we are a backbone of the overall economy of this region. So if you if you are not back at the center of the scene, and we are marginalized, you see on the newspaper, on the television, maybe we are for folkloristic things. Oh, this good farmer with the cow. And I mean, we are center in that sense, and we are losing, because when we are talking about innovation, how can you think that you can do innovation with the involvement of the society? How can you think another paradigm of research when you don't have the involvement of the society? And you are stuck only on very small lobby that are interested on their economic, they are based on their economic interests. So the next step, the proposal that we have done, that we have so many proposals, and I think that more or less in this table we all agree on that. No, we all agree that it's central the farmer. We have to go out of this idea that the area payment is the only solution to give money to farmer, and more. We all agree that the real problem is that the farmer has to get their fair prices. And then you build a policy on that. So it's a matter of aid, but it's a matter of rules. And we need rules, all kinds of rules. I think to the hygiene rules for processing food in the farm. I think many different rules that are even, I mean, public procurement rules. We, in Europe, we eat now more outside home than inside the house. And public procurement is central. What are the rules for us? So those rules are so essential as the CAP in that sense. So this is really, and we have the proposal. We are, what is really essential, and I finish, we are already there. We are already there. We are not something, maybe in 30 years you can achieve that. I fear when I hear that Jean-François, he says, we are the front runner. Because the front runner is a difficult position. I come from Sicily, and usually I don't want to show off too much because I will be shot. So, yes, okay, it's nice to be a front runner, but we want to be really part of the society, not only the front runner. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this first round, and now I will open the discussion to you and to your questions, so that we come into a discussion with all the experts we have here in the audience. So here I have the first question.
Hi, I'm Ben Casper from the European Commission, and I want to thank you all for your very interesting debate. The point I want to make is that I think there is a big gap between the global megatrends and the problems which were presented at the beginning of the session and our policy response. And that gap should give us sleepless nights. So we need to think about a totality of our policy that will actually address some of these global megatrends which threaten our children and grandchildren and their futures and our ecosystems, etc. And the only way to really do that is to make sure that we value our ecosystems, our biodiversity, our water, our nitrogen cycles, etc., and include that value in our policy making. As far as I'm aware, when people start running out of money in the financial crisis, well, certainly in the UK last year, they stopped buying fruit and vegetables, and the organic market starts to slide. Yet these are the products which actually have the highest nature added value compared to certain other ones. So there's something wrong. We're not valuing our ecosystems properly. We're valuing other things, and we need to think longer term. That's all.
May I ask you, what is the concrete suggestion to reach this, what do you say?
Well, okay, I think if, for example, if we genuinely believe that organic production is the front runner of sustainability, we have to make sure that that is then consumers are sort of incentivized to purchase organic products, for example. I think if you have certain products which have a much bigger nature sort of impact than others, we need to make sure that that's represented in the cost. And this is not something I'm saying as some sort of lunatic from DG Environment. This is written in the Europe 2020 strategy agreed by everybody. It's about greening the economy. We're talking about moving taxes from labor to resources in the long run. And that's the sorts of things we have to think about. We have to take it seriously and make sure that the policy decisions we have actually could have a real impact.
You want to add something? Yeah.
I just briefly respond.
So please,
I mean, I think when we had a presentation of the incredible challenges we're up against, both environmentally and in terms of our health, but I think it's really important to distinguish between macro policy and trying to address a variety of problems at the same time. And there, the CAP is the biggest game in town in terms of setting more value on environmental protection and on healthier food. If we really take some bigger steps and some smarter small steps, the CAP is really what can turn it at the macro level. But I think really when we want to work with food as a total package, not just as organics, but reducing waste, more green food, less meat, a more climate-friendly diet, I think that's at the micro level. That's really, it's amazing. I mean, in the projects in Food for Life in England and in the kitchens in Copenhagen, the people working in the kitchens are better able to unite these different needs for action than European policy, by far. But I think there are real opportunities within the CAP if we really understand the power of it and use it. Because I mean, I think the best picture of the CAP in the old days, there was those sunflower fields in Italy and other places. Some of them even were harvested because there was so much support for sunflowers. And the reason that it's a picture for me, besides that it was beautiful, was that, I mean, sunflowers are heliotropic. I mean, they turned in the direction of the sun, and so do farmers. But I'm not just talking about farmers being a mechanism of policy where now we're going to support this and you do that, but as a dynamic, creative force for change, really making change and finding new ways so that the market has to turn it. Organics is the best at that. The market has to turn that focus, but policy has to turn that focus in a dramatic way, 180 degrees.
So there are, here, that's the next question. Okay, Susan, and then Otto, and...
Just one question, because it came up yesterday and it came up today again, and I think we want to have it clarified. There was this suggestion that supporting market development of organic market has been taken out of the CAP, and it's now all focused on local markets. And given that we all agree, I think, or most of us agree, that taking the consumers with us on this journey, although I'm not a favor of trying to educate them because it doesn't really work that well, but to build capacity where consumers can find out information if they wish, where farmers can express what they have to say, to have these capacities to bring the market focus into the production focus is absolutely essential. So I would really like Jean-François to clarify whether this is a change that was planned from the Commission side or whether it isn't. Thank you.
Okay, that's a question addressed to you. I give you the possibility to answer.
Yeah, thank you. In the rural development part, we have a number of measures which are focusing on making the balance of powers between consumers and producers in a different way. So that's all the part where we'll try to push measures to be operated at producer group level and at in cooperation between producers. So regarding the consumer side, yes, well, we have also in other parts of the CAP, we have the so-called promotion. I know it's not exactly the question you asked, but that's what we have in the CAP. And here we have recently made a new proposal to reinforce the promotion. I don't like to use the word promotion, but it's promotion, education, and information of consumers throughout Europe. And I think here we have a tool which can be used both for sustainable production, for organic farming, for quality products in general.
But in the rural development action is no longer there.
No, because it's a single alone, a standalone part of the policies. That's a standalone regulation with its own funding. And what we are asking, Commission, we are asking to increase very significantly this funding for promotion, education, information of consumers. That's quite a challenge in the budgetary context we have now.
Otto, your question?
For me, the local level or the micro-regional level is one of the key to find solutions. I mean, not just for marketing. There's a lot of discussion about local marketing, but if we look at the problems of nutrients and landscape, that's all on micro level. And if you want to reconnect people and farmers, and if you want to go, what Niels has said in finding new ways of cooperation between farms to find new ways of rotations. That's something which has to happen. That it works on a local or micro level, even in towns, where all these peri or the urban initiatives they happen on a very let's say micro level scale. And for me, most of the political measures, they're far too high. They don't reach this micro level. Of course, there are these city initiatives, which is great, but I think I would like much more that, just give an example, in Switzerland, the payment for ecological diversification, they have been amended with a measure when, on a community level, farmers and community people develop together kind of new landscape and reconnect landscape element together in a participative process, then they get additional payments for it. And this has initiated a lot of such initiatives on this community level. And I think when we think about incentives, they should not just look at national or regional level, but also on this micro level.
Thank you. That's a comment, but is there a response here? You will give a response to this? Okay, fine.
Yeah, whilst I would agree that many of these processes have to be orchestrated also at the micro level, you run the risk of being penny wise and pound foolish if you're not clear on the overarching intervention. So what I was pleading for earlier is that if you look at agriculture, I would like a philosophy to be developed how agriculture at large can become more resource efficient in terms of water use, in terms of nutrient use, in terms of carbon capture. You can do it in many ways, but if you can agree that that would be leading principles to steer the agricultural sector, you could gear your instruments towards it. And to give one example, if you look at innovation, we talk a lot about innovation. Well, you can't take it for granted. The market drives innovation. And if you, through interventions, can actually favor certain trajectories of innovation, you should do that. For example, if you start taxing things like inputs or things like pesticides, if you would tax them, then you can bet that there will be a lot of innovative ways of trying to reduce your dependency on it. And it's that kind of logic that I would like to see under the entire intervention. And as it is now, with all the credits that I should give to the current proposals, it has been an incremental change of an instrument that has historically grown, and I understand that. But I think in the long term we have to really develop some new basic intervention principles. And then within those basic principles you can allow for a lot of regional variation and local variation. And that's where your story comes in, I think. But at the moment these things don't match.
Hi, I just wanted to, I got a bit overexcited earlier. You asked me what we should do about it. And of course, the correct answer is that we need to develop a slightly more holistic approach in our policy making towards sustainable food. And that's what we're doing with the whole Commission, with DG Agriculture, the Health Department and Environment, as well as others. We're developing a sustainable food communication for 2013. So in that, we're hoping to take a step back and look at the whole picture, very much along the lines you're talking about, and say, well, what's the appropriate policy response in the different areas?
But what Otto discussed was that we need solutions at different levels, and my question now is it possible that with these different levels we really get a change? Or maybe Niels, you can give an answer to that, or is it necessary that we need some main ways to get really effects on environment and on a sustainable development? Or do we need a diversification of solutions at the micro level, at the national level, and so on?
Wow. Simple question, isn't it? Let all the flowers grow. I mean, that's we need both, simply, and the innovation partnership idea, I think, could allow us to take better care of these, let's say, locally adapted solutions, and I think that is really important, and it fits a lot better with the organic principles. So that is for sure one approach. But as I said, there is also the challenge. I mean, the challenge that we've set for ourselves, which is now coined eco-functional intensification or ecological intensification, is really a lot tougher than even I anticipated a few years ago. It's such a nice catchphrase, but when you think of it, it is really difficult to do, both for economic reasons, which I described with the increased pressure on the intensification of this sector and so on, but also because we really lack knowledge. So we can't do alone, I think, with the localized solutions, because there won't be enough funding and time perspective to really create the knowledge basis in biological and other terms that we also need in order to be really a transformed organic sector in 10 years. I mean, remember, we are still an immature, at least in my, a lot have been accomplished, as you said, but I still think in terms of agricultural systems, when you walk around and see, it's still an immature system compared to, or many farms are, compared to our principles. So there is a challenge, and I should hope that the majority of organic farms are even a lot more innovative or developed in another 10 years. And that cannot only be done, I think, with local approaches because of the knowledge general, more biological and technical knowledge that we need. I mean, and then there's the who can develop a robot for weeding in row crops, which is highly needed at a local level. You need a lot of funds and technical knowledge for that. So both.
So you want to say also something on that?
Yeah,
issue?
I want to add something. If we talk about the different levels, I mean, for us, the basic level is good legislation, is environmental legislation that is really implemented correctly. But then your second mechanism is rural development. Rural development is really a great tool that we should all use much more. Now, within the new policy, you have your priorities. You have to test your priorities. You have to see what are your problems on the different priorities. And then you have to design your measures. And these measures are regional and very local. And you can design them however you want. The issue is that it's already happening, that we should all be now sitting on our governments and saying, excuse me, how are you doing that evaluation? If they're not taking into account the organic sector properly, if they're not doing a real environmental assessment of their problems, if they're not looking at all the social problems that there are, at the age problems that there are in the rural areas, they will not be incentivized to take the right measure to actually tackle these problems, and they will not give the possibilities to people to use the measures innovatively to do something with it. And I think rural development as a programming approach is really a great example of how it can work. I mean, people can use it however they like in every regions, but you set certain European-wide priorities, and then you ask people, analyze them. Do you have a problem? Tackle them. If you don't have a problem, you don't have to tackle them, and then people find ways on how to deal with them. But this is already happening now, although the regulation is not finalized yet. Those rural development programs, those analyses are happening now. So we have to already be involved with our governments to try and ensure that they analyze the full picture and not just what they care about politically.
So Robert Peterson, you want to add also something?
Yeah, just on I think on the kind of local policy or local innovation contra macro policy. I'm gonna quote Professor Kevin Morgan from the UK, and what he says is what we have is islands of best practice in a sea of mediocrity. And I think there's two important aspects with macro policy. One is that we need to make sure that the macro policy isn't counterproductive in relation to what's going on at local level. And the other thing is we have to figure out, because there is a lot of good things going on, and I think in the session I was involved in yesterday, we started with presenting this big worry picture of what's going to happen in our future, but we had people at ground level doing a lot of very constructive work. So I think the other issue is we have to take a look at this, and I don't think best practice, generally speaking, travels well. But what we have to do is we have to look at how we can take this best practice, whether it be ecological measures, social innovation around food chains, and we need to figure out how we can scale that up using macro policy, because it's good to have changes at local level, but we also have to think about making big changes.
Well, thank you. I think we've got a good picture about micro level and legal level and the relationship between both. Do you want to add something, or do you have a new issue?
Additional.
Okay.
What I'm a little bit missing in the discussion is that also in the Commission is coming with, in the proposals, are talking about a collective approach of collectives. And I think that 2012 is the International UN Year of the Cooperative. And I think we have to realize that the cooperative movement was born in the 1880s and in the 1930s, in the depth of the crisis, where our grandfathers and grandmothers were thinking, hey, wait a minute, to face the crisis and to face all the big problems, we need to work together. As our friend from Switzerland was saying, on the local level. Also today, all over the world, it's a little bit hidden. You see new forms of cooperatives coming up. When my colleague from Greece is telling about young people now going back to the farm, and which is not the rural exodus, as you described, is not a natural process. It's a choice, And when more than, you told me yesterday, 1.5 million young people in Greece are now going back to the farm, and that means that the rural exodus is going the other way around. If you see the statistics in France, that the last 2 years of INRA, the rural exodus is stopped. It's an urban exodus to the rural areas for economical reasons, for different categories. And I know myself as well that in the organic world, the cooperative working together is not easy. And I think that it's a huge challenge also to say to the Common Agricultural Policy, put some very explicit incentives to create new cooperative movement on the local level in relationship to food, including the consumers, and we see that in many villages and towns around the world, and also create cooperatives for the public goods of the farmers. Because if you, and I think Ned was yesterday very clear on that, if you want really to preserve and to restore the landscapes, we need collective approach on the regional level. Just a contract with an individual beautiful organic farmer who's taking care for 100% of the biodiversity has no clue and has no effect if you don't do it in a collective way. And collective and cooperative, I know in Eastern Europe, is very tough and very hard given the negative ideology from the past, but we have to go through that. And also, I think it's also for IFOA very important to rethink how in the marketing on the long term we can do that more in a cooperative way, and how we can use the internet and web shops in a more direct relationship with consumers. Many possibilities, and that will be institutional innovation. Thank you.
So I have 2 remarks or answers. First, you, Mrs. Kemp.
Yes, I do have a small reaction to that. Coincidentally, European Milk Board has done investigation to the cooperatives and the position of the members in the cooperatives and also the working of the cooperatives. It was also for the Netherlands done by Niek Koning from Wageningen University. And the outcome of the investigation is that cooperatives are a good way of bringing the people together, but do not prevent you from the market infertility or the volatility in the market and surpluses that bring the prices down and bring a lot of problems. So you need the extra measures from the government to protect you to a lot of unwanted effects. So just a cooperative that isn't going to bring you into a better market. You need market legislation, you need rules.
I completely agree with that, but I'm only saying, and I think that also our generation is influenced a lot in a negative way by the bad practice of many cooperatives, large-scale cooperatives, who has become just regular agribusiness, and that which has forgotten. And also we have to take care that that kind of negative cynicism on cooperatives will lead to just more individualism in agriculture. And if you say cooperative you can define as common self-interest, then we can start again. And we should not be too much influenced in a negative way about the so-called cooperative agribusiness. Take care of that. And also, in Greece, I've seen also that negative thinking about cooperatives. But still, young people are believing that you can do something together. And you need supply management, and you need fair prices. I agree completely with that, but we underestimate the force of future cooperatives.
Andrea, please.
Yes, I think that in our movement we are shifting to the idea that we have to convert the single farm and we are going to convert territory. And that's the main thing that we have to do. And this is clear that there you have a social aspect that is very important, because when you are talking about territory, you are not talking only about agriculture, but you are going beyond agriculture. And then you have an element that is central also in the discussion cooperative, that is participation. That is something that is linked to our movement, and we have to recall this part, because all our organizations are democratic, membership-based, and with a lot of participation. We also discuss too much, and we waste a lot of time. But this is essential for us, Because participation is the way you link people together. The social link, the capacity to make relation is what really makes things changing and do all the things that we want to do. So in that sense, I totally share the idea that we need to do this kind of thing, thinking at territory level and come together and do new things. That has to be absolutely new, because in Italy we have those experience of biodistrict that it's more or less but because we have to say something about rural development that I think that it's very important. Yes, it's a fantastic tool, but we need also something new, because it's a fantastic tool without money. Because we have to be clear on that. In the future, the money on rural development will be really, really a small amount of money, and we can't think. Also, if we increase the budget, I will never think that they will do that, but also if they increase the budget, it will never be enough if we really want to 20% of agricultural land and 30% of a farmer in Europe doing organic. So we need to have something new in that sense.
Yeah, just one point more. I fully agree with what Aria said, because in the proposal of the CAP reform, in the second pillar, well, basically the second pillar does not change too much. We do no longer have the 3 axes or a number of constraints, but I mean the philosophy or the multi-annual programming, etc., is the same. But there is something which is different. Here there is more focus on collaborative approach, cooperation between farmers, producer groups, having one measure or one action put in action on one territory. For example, agri-environment, which is more efficient if several farmers are contracting environmental measures in the same defined area and things like that. So this approach is here in the second pillar. But in the first pillar, I would like to also underline the fact that the organization of producers, cooperatives and associations and economic operations, they were very limited in the past. In the past, it was difficult to have vertical integration of producers and good organization just because of the competition law. And because of the competition law, it was impossible to have this acting on the market, because the competition law supposes that there is no pre-agreement between various producers. There was one exception for fruit and vegetables, but this exception, so producer groups for fruit and vegetables could be properly organized, but this exception is now generalized to all the agricultural sectors, which is good progress and will allow associations or cooperatives to develop more on the market.
So I have 2 more questions. Yes, you, and then